The sun dips below the frost-covered horizon, and you feel the first bite of the winter wind against your skin. You are standing in a small clearing in 14th century Europe. The air is so cold it hurts to breathe. Your boots are thin leather, and the damp earth beneath you is turning to iron. Behind you, a small timber cottage sits low against the landscape, its thatched roof heavy with snow. There are no glass windows to keep the draft out, and no thick blankets to wrap yourself in. As the stars sharpen in the black sky, you realize that tonight is not just about discomfort. It is about survival. You push open the heavy wooden door, and the smell of wood smoke and wet fur hits you. This is your world now. This is how you stay alive when the world tries to freeze you solid. You stand at the edge of the village common, looking toward a horizon that feels heavier than it did only a week ago. The sun is not just setting, it is retreating. It hangs low and pale, a bruised orange smudge against a sky the color of cold iron. You can feel the change in your very marrow. The air has lost the golden warmth of the harvest and replaced it with a sharpened edge that catches in the back of your throat with every breath. You reach up to pull your wool hood tighter around your face, feeling the rough, scratchy fibers against your skin. This is the time of year when the world begins to die, and you know that your survival depends entirely on how well you have spent the last few months of light. Take a moment to look at your hands. They are mapped with the dirt of the fields, the skin cracked and stained by the tannins of oak bark and the grease of the sheep you sheared months ago. These hands have been moving since before the sun rose, and they will not stop until the light is completely gone. To your left, the village of wattle and daub houses huddles together as if they, too, are trying to share warmth. Thick plumes of gray smoke rise from the thatched roofs, but the wind catches them quickly, tearing the smoke away and scattering it into the darkening woods. The rhythm of the village has changed. In the summer, the air was filled with the sounds of shouting, the rhythmic clack of the loom, and the high whistle of children playing in the tall grass. Now, the sounds are different. They are more urgent, more percussive. You hear the relentless thud of an axe hitting a log over and over, as your neighbor tries to build a woodpile that will last until April. You hear the frantic squeal of a pig from the communal pens. It is the time of the great slaughter. You cannot afford to keep every animal alive through the winter because there simply will not be enough fodder to feed them. Every mouth that eats without providing labor is a threat to the rest of the family. You walk toward your own home, your boots sinking into the hardening mud of the path. The mud is starting to crust over with the first real frost of the season. It crunches under your weight, a brittle sound that signals the end of the soft earth. You pass the granary, the most important building in the village. Its heavy timber doors are locked tight, and a watchman sits nearby, his eyes scanning the shadows. Inside that building lies the difference between a spring of life and a spring of starvation. The grain is dry, piled high in bins, but you know how quickly it can disappear. You think of the damp, the mold, and the rats that are even now trying to find a way inside. They are your enemies, just as much as the cold is. As you reach the threshold of your house, you stop to look at your own woodpile. It sits against the southern wall, stacked high with seasoned oak, ash, and birch. You have spent every spare moment for weeks dragging fallen branches from the forest, taking advantage of your ancient right to gather whatever wood you could carry by hook or by crook. But as you look at the stack, it seems smaller than it did this morning. The winter is a hungry beast, and it eats wood faster than a man can cut it. You wonder if it will be enough. You wonder if the lord of the manor will be lenient if you are caught taking green wood from the deeper forest when the blizzards arrive in January. You push open the heavy wooden door of your cottage. The interior is a world of shadows and shifting orange light. There are no windows, only small slits covered with translucent animal bladders that let in a gray, ghostly glow during the day. Now they are dark. The only source of light is the hearth in the center of the room. It is not a fireplace with a chimney like the ones in the great stone manor house on the hill. Instead, it is a raised stone circle on the dirt floor. The smoke rises through the air, filling the rafters and blackening the thatch before eventually seeping out through a hole in the roof or through the gaps in the walls. The smell hits you immediately. It is a thick, complex aroma that defines your entire existence. It is the smell of dry straw, of old wood smoke that has settled into the very fabric of your clothes, and the earthy scent of the floor. Underneath that is the smell of the animals. In the corner, separated from the living area by a low wooden partition, your family cow and a few precious sheep are already huddled. Their body heat is a vital resource. On the coldest nights, you will sleep as close to that partition as possible, drawing in the warmth of their breath and their massive, radiating bodies. It is a claustrophobic, heavy atmosphere, but to you it feels like safety. Your spouse is kneeling by the fire, stirring a heavy iron pot. The contents are a thick pottage of dried peas, leeks, and a small amount of salted pork. This is the taste of autumn turning to winter. The fresh vegetables of the garden are gone, and everything you eat now comes from a jar, a sack, or a pickling barrel. You see the strings of onions and dried herbs hanging from the rafters, swaying slightly in the draft that whistles through the door frame. These are your treasures. Every dried leaf and every salted rind is a calorie that will keep the shivering at bay. You sit down on a low wooden bench, feeling the ache in your lower back. The transition from autumn to winter is a mental toll as much as a physical one. During the long days of summer, you felt a sense of expansion. The world was big, the sun stayed up forever, and the possibilities felt as wide as the fields. But now the world is shrinking. Your entire universe is becoming this one room, this one circle of firelight. The darkness outside the door feels like a physical wall, something thick and impenetrable that holds nameless terrors and the very real threat of the frost. You think about the blankets. You have 2 heavy woolen coverlets, woven by your mother years ago. They are coarse and heavy, but they are the most valuable things you own besides your tools. Earlier today, you and your family were out in the fields gathering dry bracken and fresh straw to restuff the mattresses. The old straw had turned to dust and invited fleas, but the new straw smells of the summer fields. It is thick and springy, and tonight, it will provide a crucial layer of insulation between your body and the freezing ground. You know that the cold does not just come from the air, it seeps up from the earth itself, pulling the heat out of your bones while you sleep. The fire flares up as a piece of dry pine catches, casting long, dancing shadows against the wattle walls. You look at the faces of your children, their skin bronzed by the firelight. They are quiet, sensing the gravity of the season. They have seen winters before, but every year is a gamble. You find yourself counting. You count the sacks of grain in your mind. You count the number of salted hams hanging in the smoke. You count the days until the winter solstice, when the sun will finally stop its retreat and begin the long, slow journey back to the world of the living. But that is weeks away. For now, the embers of autumn are dying. The last of the apples have been pressed into cider or stored in cool sand. The last of the honey has been gathered, the bees now silent in their hives. The world is stripping itself bare. The leaves are gone, leaving the trees like skeletal hands reaching toward the cold stars. You feel a deep, ancestral urge to huddle, to pull everything you love into a tight, defenseless circle. You reach out and take a wooden bowl of pottage, the steam rising into your face. It is hot, and the warmth of the bowl against your palms is the greatest luxury you can imagine. Outside, the wind begins to howl, a low morning sound that vibrates through the thatch. It is the first true wind of the coming season, the one that tells the birds to fly south and the wolves to come closer to the village edge. You take a swallow of the thick soup, feeling the warmth travel down your chest. This is the threshold. This is the moment where the preparation ends and the endurance begins. The golden days are a memory, and the white days are coming. You look at the fire, the heart of your home, and you realize that for the next 4 months, this small, flickering flame is the only thing standing between you and the void. You lean forward, basking in the dying embers of the year, knowing that the real test has only just begun. The frost is coming for the world, but tonight, inside these walls, you are still warm. You watch the last of the orange light fade from the slits in the wall, and the long medieval night begins. You reach out your hand in the thickening gloom and touch the surface of your world. It is rough, uneven, and cold to the touch, but it is the only thing standing between you and the killing frost outside. This is not the stone of a castle or the heavy timber of a merchant house in the city. These are the walls of a peasant cot, and they are made of the very earth you tilled all summer long. To understand how you survive the winter, you have to understand the architecture of necessity. You are living inside a structure that is less like a modern building and more like a carefully crafted ceramic vessel, designed to hold heat and breathe just enough to keep you alive. Take a moment to feel the wall under your fingertips. In the dark, your senses sharpen. You can feel the ridges where the mud has been smoothed over by human hands. These walls are known as wattle and daub. It sounds primitive, but it is a masterpiece of medieval engineering. Behind that layer of dried mud is a skeleton of wood. Imagine a giant, sturdy basket woven from upright stakes of oak or ash, with flexible branches of hazel or willow woven horizontally through them. This is the wattle, provides the flex and the frame. If the earth shifts or the wind howls, this woven core allows the house to give a little without snapping. But the wattle alone would let the wind whistle right through your ribs. That is where the daub comes in. You remember the smell of it from when the house was last repaired. It is a mixture of clay, soil, straw, and often animal dung. It sounds revolting to a modern ear, but in your world, it is the ultimate sealant. The straw provides tensile strength, acting like the steel rebar in modern concrete, preventing the clay from cracking as it dries. The dung contains enzymes and fibers that help bind the whole mess together and make it remarkably weather-resistant. When this mixture dries, it becomes a hard, thick shell. As the temperature drops toward freezing outside, these walls are your greatest ally. They have a high thermal mass. During the day, whatever meager heat comes from the sun or the small fire in the center of the room is absorbed into these thick, muddy walls. At night, when the fire sinks to a glow, the walls begin to radiate that heat back toward you. It is a slow, steady release. You aren't just heating the air because the air would escape through the door or the thatch. You are heating the house itself. You are living inside a thermal battery. Look down at your feet. You are not standing on boards or tiles. You are standing on the earth. This floor has been beaten down by generations of footsteps until it is as hard as stone. To keep the dampness of the ground from seeping into your bones, you have scattered a thick layer of rushes and straw across the floor. This is your carpet and your insulation. It traps pockets of air, creating a barrier between the frozen soil beneath the house and the living space above. In the height of winter, you might add more straw, creating a deep, golden nest that muffles the sound of your movements. But the walls and the floor are only part of the story. You look up, though you can see nothing but deep, velvety shadow. Above you is the thatch. A medieval roof is a massive, heavy cap of wheat straw or water reeds, sometimes 2 or 3 feet thick. It is not just a lid to keep the rain off. It is a thick wool hat for your home. While the walls hold the heat, the thatch prevents it from escaping into the sky. Because there is no chimney, the smoke from your central hearth rises and gets trapped in the underside of this thick straw. You might think the smoke would be a nuisance, and it is, but it also serves a vital purpose. The smoke permeates the straw, killing off vermin and insects that would otherwise make a home in your roof. More importantly, it creates a layer of warm, buoyant air just under the ceiling. This pocket of warmth helps push back against the cold air trying to press down through the reeds. The thatch breathes, allowing the smoke to slowly filter out so you do not suffocate, but it does so at a pace that keeps the warmth inside as long as possible. As you stand there in the dark, you hear a heavy, rhythmic sound from the other side of the room. It is a deep, wet breath followed by a low rustle of straw. You are not alone in this house. In the medieval winter, your livestock are your most precious possessions, and you cannot leave them outside to freeze. The far end of your longhouse, separated perhaps by a simple wooden partition or nothing at all, is where your ox, your cow, or your few sheep are huddled. This is the secret radiator of the peasant home. A single cow produces a staggering amount of body heat. By bringing the animals inside, you are using their metabolism to help keep the room above freezing. The smell is a thick mix of damp wool, manure, and animal breath, but to you, that smell represents survival. If the animals stay warm, they stay alive, and if they stay alive, your family will have milk, power for the plow, and wealth for the coming year. Their heat rises and mingles with the heat of your fire, creating a microclimate that is significantly warmer than the world outside the door. You move toward the center of the room, feeling the change in temperature. The hearth is the heart of this earthen vessel. It is not a fireplace set into a wall, but a simple circle of stones on the floor. Because it is in the middle of the room, the heat radiates in every direction. There is no heat lost up a stone chimney. Every bit of energy from the burning wood or peat stays within these 4 walls of mud. You find your spot on the floor, close to the embers. Think about the silence of a medieval night. Outside, the wind is screaming across the open fields, unhindered by fences or forests. It hits your house with the force of a physical blow. But inside, behind a foot of dried mud and straw, the air is still. You can hear the straw in the roof groaning under the pressure, but you do not feel the draft. The walls are thick enough to muffle the sound of the storm, turning the roar of the winter into a distant, low hum. Your entire existence in this moment is defined by these materials. You are a creature of the earth, protected by the earth. The wood, the clay, the straw, and the breath of the beasts create a cocoon. It is not comfortable by the standards of a later age. Your eyes might sting from the lingering haze of smoke, and your clothes might feel damp from the humidity of so many living things in a small space. But you are warm. The frost that is currently turning the world outside into a brittle, white wasteland cannot reach you here. You wrap your wool cloak tighter around your shoulders and settle into the straw. You can feel the heat of the earth floor beneath you and the radiated warmth of the wattle and daub walls surrounding you. You are part of a thermal cycle that has been perfected over 1,000 years. The very ground you walk on has been raised up to form a shield. In this space, the winter is not an enemy that has broken in, but a neighbor that has been firmly locked out. As the fire settles into a deep, pulsing red, you realize that these walls are not just a shelter. They are a promise that you will see the sun rise again. The darkness is absolute now, but the house feels small and secure. The thickness of the walls gives you a sense of permanence. You know that even if the fire goes out completely, the mud and the straw will hold onto their secrets for hours. The heat will linger in the clay. The animals will keep breathing their heavy, warm breath. You close your eyes, listening to the wind fail to find a way inside. The medieval night is long, and the cold is bitter, but you are inside the earth now, and the earth knows how to keep its own warm. The straw rustles as you find a comfortable position, and for the first time since the sun went down, you feel the tension leave your muscles. You are safe within the walls of mud and straw. You are sitting on a low wooden stool, or perhaps just a bundle of tightly bound straw, leaning as close to the center of the room as you dare. In the middle of this small, cramped space lies the hearth. It is not the grand, stone-mantled fireplace you might see in a manor house or a castle. It is something far more primal. Here, in your peasant cottage, the hearth is simply a raised patch of hard-packed clay or a few flat stones laid directly onto the dirt floor. There is no chimney to whisk the smoke away. There is no iron grate to hold the logs. There is only the fire, raw and hungry, flickering in the very heart of your living space. The heat hits your face with a sudden, aggressive intensity. It is a dry, biting heat that makes the skin across your cheekbones feel tight and brittle. After the bone-deep dampness of the winter fields and the biting wind that whistled through the gaps in your door, this warmth should be a blessing. And in many ways, it is. It is the only thing standing between you and the slow, creeping lethality of hypothermia. But this comfort is a cruel one. It demands a heavy price for every degree of warmth it provides. You lean forward, stretching your hands toward the embers, and you immediately feel the first sting in your eyes. This is the reality of the chimneyless home. As the wood or peat burns, the smoke does not have a clear path of escape. It rises from the hearth in thick, gray ribbons, swirling around the room before it eventually finds the small hole cut into the thatch of the roof, often called a louver. But that hole is small, and the wind outside often pushes the air back down, trapping the smoke inside with you. Within minutes of the fire being lit, a thick, hazy layer of wood smoke settles just above your head. It hangs there like a heavy velvet curtain, a shimmering, acrid fog that fills the upper half of the cottage. If you were to stand up quickly, you would find yourself coughing, your lungs burning as you inhaled the concentrated essence of the fire. So you learn to live low. You sit, you kneel, and you crawl. You exist in the clear air that lingers only 2 or 3 feet above the floor. But even here, the smoke finds you. It makes your eyes water constantly, leaving red rims around your lids and a permanent itch in your throat. This is why many of your neighbors have a perpetual cough that lasts from November until April. It is not just the cold. It is the very thing that keeps them warm. The smell is something you will never truly wash away. Permeates everything. It is in the heavy wool of your tunic, in the flax of your undergarments, and even in your hair and skin. It is a pungent mixture of resinous pine, the earthy, damp scent of burning peat, and perhaps the faint, gamey aroma of a piece of salt pork or a pot of pottage simmering in a cauldron suspended over the flames. To a modern nose, it might be overwhelming, but to you, this smell is the scent of survival. When you are out in the dark, miles from home, the scent of wood smoke on the wind is the first sign that you might live to see another morning. But the hearth is a fickle master. While your front is roasting, your back is freezing. This is the great paradox of the medieval winter night. Because your cottage is not airtight, the fire creates a powerful draft. It sucks cold air in through every crack in the wattle and daub walls, through the gaps under the door, and through the very thatch above your head. This cold air rushes toward the fire, cooling your back and neck even as the flames singe your knees. You find yourself constantly rotating, turning like a piece of meat on a spit, trying to distribute the warmth evenly across your body. You are caught in a constant tug of war between the blistering heat of the hearth and the icy fingers of the winter night pressing in from behind. You look down at the fuel you are burning. It is not the thick, seasoned oak logs that the lord of the manor uses. As a peasant, your access to wood is strictly regulated. The forest belongs to the lord, and taking a standing tree is a crime that could lead to heavy fines or worse. You are limited to what the law calls by hook or by crook. This means you can only take the deadwood you can reach with a shepherd's crook or pull down with a hook. Consequently, your fire is made of thin branches, gorse, dried brush, and perhaps some salvaged roots. If you live in a region without much forest, you might be burning peat. These are heavy, dark bricks of dried bog earth. They burn slowly and stubbornly, giving off a thick, heavy heat and a sweet, cloying smoke that lingers in the back of your throat for hours. If you are truly desperate, you might even use dried animal dung, which provides a hot but fast-burning flame and a smell that you eventually learn to ignore. Every scrap of fuel is precious. Every branch represents an hour of searching in the cold. You do not waste a single spark. As the night progresses, the fire becomes the center of your social world. It is the only light you have. Tallow candles are expensive and give off a foul-smelling, dim light, so most of your evening activities happen by the orange glow of the hearth. You see the faces of your family flickering in the shadows. This is when the stories are told. You hear the elders speak of great frosts from decades past, of wolves that grew so hungry they leaped over the village fences, and of the saints who protect the humble. The firelight dances on the soot-stained walls, turning the hanging bundles of dried herbs and the smoked meats in the rafters into strange, monstrous shapes. The soot itself is an unintended consequence of this survival strategy. Over years of winter fires, the inside of your thatch roof has become coated in a thick, black, glistening layer of creosote and carbon. It smells like ancient ash. While it is a fire hazard, it also serves a purpose. The smoke and the soot act as a natural pesticide, killing the vermin and insects that would otherwise thrive in the straw of your roof. It also helps to preserve the timber beams of the house, hardening them against rot. You live in a blackened box, a smokehouse for humans, where the very air that stings your eyes is also keeping your home from falling apart. But the danger is never far from your mind. Your entire world is made of flammable materials. The floor is covered in dried rushes or straw. The walls are made of wood and straw-tempered mud. Above you is a massive pile of bone-dry thatch. One stray spark, one log rolling out of the hearth while you sleep, and the entire cottage would be an inferno in minutes. You have seen it happen to others. You have heard the screams in the night and watched as a neighbor's life vanished in a roar of orange flame. This is why the ritual of the fire is so disciplined. As the hour grows late and the weight of exhaustion pulls at your limbs, you prepare for the banking of the fire. This is a vital task. You cannot let the fire burn unchecked while you sleep, for the risk of a house fire is too great. But you also cannot let it go out entirely. Starting a fire from scratch in the morning is a laborious, difficult process involving flint, steel, and tinder that must be kept perfectly dry. If your fire dies, You might have to walk to a neighbor's house with a ceramic pot to beg for a glowing coal, a humbling and cold journey you wish to avoid. Instead, you perform the couvre-feu or the cover fire, a term that will eventually become the word curfew. You use a metal or ceramic lid, or sometimes just a heavy layer of ash, to cover the glowing embers. This starves the fire of much of its oxygen, slowing the combustion to a crawl. The embers will smolder all night, buried under their own gray blanket, staying hot and alive without bursting into flame. You look one last time at the fading glow behind the hearthstones. The room is darkening, the shadows stretching out from the corners to reclaim the space. The air is still thick with smoke, and the cold is already beginning to win the battle against the lingering heat. You wrap your wool cloak tighter around your shoulders, feeling the grit of the soot on your skin. The hearth has provided you with enough warmth to survive another evening, but its comfort is fleeting and its presence is a burden as much as a blessing. As you prepare to move away from the warmth and toward your bedding, you know that the fire is the only heart this house has, and its slow, pulsing red heat is the only thing that keeps the winter from claiming you where you sit. You stand up from the hearth, and the sudden loss of direct heat against your shins makes you shiver. The fire is dying down to a dull, rhythmic pulse of orange and gray. You turn your back on the center of the room and look toward the far end of the longhouse. There, the shadows are deeper, and the air feels different. It is thicker and more humid. You begin to walk away from the living quarters, your feet crunching softly on the rushes and the hard-packed earth. As you move, the temperature does not drop as sharply as you expected. In fact, the further you get from the fading fire, the more you encounter a heavy, pervasive blanket of warmth that smells of damp hay, sweet clover, and the pungent, musky scent of living creatures. You have reached the byre. In this era, your home is not just for your family. It is a shared sanctuary for every living thing that ensures your survival. You are entering the domain of the livestock. In the pitch blackness of the winter night, you cannot see them clearly, but you can feel them. There is a rhythmic, low sound like a heavy bellows working in the corner. That is the ox. There is a rustle of straw and a soft, wet snuffle. Those are the sheep. You reach out your hand into the dark, feeling the rough timber of the partition that separates the human sleeping area from the animal stalls. As your hand finds the edge of a wooden post, you feel the radiating heat coming off the animals. It is a biological furnace that never goes out. A single cow can put out as much heat as a small electric space heater would in a modern world, but here you have 4 or 5 of them. They are massive 500-pound radiators of flesh and bone. Their bodies are constantly burning through the dried grasses and hay you gathered during the frantic weeks of late summer. That internal chemical fire, the process of digestion, produces a steady and reliable flow of warmth that rises from their hides and fills the enclosed space of the longhouse. You step over the low wooden threshold into the animal section. The ground here is slightly lower than the living area, a design choice meant to allow the liquid waste to trickle toward a drain hole in the far wall. The floor is covered in a thick layer of bedding, a mixture of old straw, dried bracken, and the accumulated manure of the day. To a modern nose, this would be unbearable, but to you, it is the smell of safety. The manure is fermenting. That fermentation process creates its own secondary heat, a slow microbial burn that warms the ground beneath your feet. You find your spot near the partition, perhaps even leaning your bedding against the very boards that touch the flank of your most valuable ox. You wrap your woolen cloak tighter around your shoulders and lie down. You are close enough to hear the animal grinding its teeth in its sleep. The sound is steady and comforting. It is a reminder that the heart of your farm is still beating. If the ox lives, you live. If the sheep stay warm enough to survive until spring, you will have wool for clothes and milk for cheese. Their survival and yours are physically intertwined. You are sharing your breath with them, and they are sharing their warmth with you. Can you imagine the intimacy of this arrangement? There is no privacy in a medieval winter, and that lack of privacy extends to the beasts of the burden. You are never truly alone. When you cough, the pig in the corner might grunt in response. When the wind howls outside, rattling the thatch and trying to find a gap in the wattle and putt walls, the cattle shift their weight. You hear the heavy thud of a hoof on the earth, a sound that vibrates through the floor and into your own ribs. It is a reminder of the sheer mass of life surrounding you. The air in the byre is heavy and moist. Each time the cattle exhale, a plume of warm, wet mist enters the room. In the extreme cold, this moisture actually helps. Dry air strips the heat from your body much faster than humid air. The collective breath of half a dozen large animals creates a microclimate inside the longhouse. It is a humid, heavy envelope that clings to the walls and the ceiling. This moisture helps seal the tiny gaps in the thatch, as the frost outside freezes the exterior of the roof into a solid, insulating shell, while the interior remains a damp, warm pocket of life. You lie there, staring up into the rafters where the smoke from the central hearth has drifted. The smoke hangs in a thick, gray veil above the animals, acting as a further layer of insulation. It also serves a more practical, if unpleasant, purpose. The acrid smoke helps to suppress the various parasites that live in the straw and on the hides of the animals. Fleas and lice are a constant reality of your life, but the stinging smoke of the peat or wood fire keeps them somewhat sluggish. In the deep winter, you accept the itchy skin and the stinging eyes as a fair trade for the warmth provided by your kindred spirits in the stalls. As the hours of the night grind on, the temperature outside may drop well below freezing. The world outside is turning into a tomb of ice, but inside the byre, the temperature remains remarkably stable. You can feel the heat radiating through the wooden planks. If you were to reach through the slats, you could bury your cold fingers into the thick, coarse hair of the cow. Her hide would feel like a hot stone pulled from a fire. This is the ultimate communal living. You are huddling together across the species barrier, driven by the same primal need to keep the blood flowing and the heart pumping. Think about the psychological comfort this brings. In the medieval world, the dark is full of terrors. The woods are home to wolves, and the folklore of your village is filled with spirits that haunt the frozen wastes. But here, in the dark of the longhouse, you are surrounded by the presence of large, powerful, and familiar lives. The ox is a symbol of strength and labor. The sheep are symbols of provision. Having them inside with you is not just a matter of keeping them from being stolen or freezing to death in a field. It is a matter of emotional fortification. You are a pack, a herd, a single unit of survival huddled against the void. You listen to the rhythm of the house. It is a symphony of biological noises. There is the low, vibrating hum of a cow's stomach. There is the occasional high-pitched bleat of a lamb that has been nudged by its mother. There is the soft, rhythmic chewing of cud, a sound that never seems to stop. It is the sound of life persisting. It is the sound of the sun, captured in the grass of the previous summer, now being released as heat through the bodies of your animals. You realize that your relationship with these creatures is far more complex than that of a modern farmer and his stock. These are not just products. They are your heaters. They are your companions in the struggle against the frost. If a cow becomes ill, the family might bring it even closer to the fire, treating it with the same urgency as they would a sick child, because the loss of that animal could mean the literal starvation of the entire household by the time the next winter arrives. The night is long, perhaps 16 hours of darkness, but the byre stays warm. You drift in and out of a shallow sleep. Every time you wake, you hear the same comforting sounds. The wind may scream against the gables, and the heavy snow may be piling up against the door, sealing you in, but the temperature near the animals remains a steady, life-saving constant. You are wrapped in a cocoon of animal heat and fermented straw. As you settle deeper into your bedding, you feel a sense of profound gratitude for the heavy, huffing presence of the beasts just inches away. They are the silent guardians of your sleep. They are the kindred spirits that bridge the gap between the deathly cold of the stone walls and the fragile spark of your own life. You close your eyes, letting the heavy, musky warmth pull you back into sleep, knowing that as long as the ox breathes, you will see the dawn. The longhouse is a vessel, and tonight you and the livestock are the only cargo that matters. You are sailing through the frozen dark together, bound by a shared warmth that no hearth fire could ever truly replicate on its own. It is the warmth of the living, a collective defiance against the killing cold of the medieval night. You rest your head, the sound of the animals becoming a lullaby, a steady beating drum of survival that carries you toward the morning light. In this moment, there is no difference between the peasant and the herd. You are all just warm bodies, holding on to each other, waiting for the sun to return to a world that feels as though it has forgotten what heat even is. But the cows remember. Their bodies hold the heat of the summer sun in their very marrow, and they give it to you freely, keeping the shadows of the winter at bay for one more night. You stand in the dim light of the early morning. The air inside the cottage is thick and cold. You feel the heavy weight of the fabric on your shoulders. It is not just clothing. It is your shield against the world outside. The cold is a physical presence in the room. You can see your breath in the moonlight that filters through the small gaps in the thatch. Before you even stand up from your bed of straw, you reach for the bundle of fabric at your feet. This is not the light and airy clothing of the future. This is the weight of survival. The first layer you touch is the linen smock. It is coarse and unbleached. It has a yellowish tint that has faded from many washings in the local stream. You slide it over your head. The fabric is icy at first. It makes you shiver as it touches your skin. But linen is essential for your life, pulls the sweat away from your body. Even in the deepest winter, you will sweat as you haul wood or tend to the livestock in the barn. If that moisture stays on your skin, the cold will use it to pull the heat right out of your core. You tuck the hem into your linen trousers, which are simple and baggy. They are held together by a simple cord tied at the waist. There are no buttons in your world. There are no zippers. Everything is held together by knots and the tension of the fabric. Next comes the wool. This is where your true protection begins. You reach for your primary tunic. It is thick and dark. When you lift it, you feel the surprising heft of the garment. This wool was shorn from the very sheep that sleep in the lean to attach to your cottage. It was cleaned with care, but it was not cleaned too much. You can still smell the faint and musky scent of the lanolin. This is the natural oil of the sheep. It is the reason the wool feels slightly greasy to your touch. This oil is your best friend in the winter months. It makes the garment water resistant. When the winter sleet begins to fall later today, the water will beat up on the surface of the wool rather than soaking through to your skin. You pull the tunic down over your torso. It reaches your mid-thigh. It is itchy and rough. The tiny fibers of the wool prickle against your neck and your arms. But within minutes, you begin to feel a change. The air trapped between the linen and the wool is beginning to warm up. Your own body heat is being captured and held close. It is a slow and steady bloom of warmth that makes the shivering stop. Because it is the middle of the winter, one tunic is not nearly enough. You reach for another one. This one is even heavier than the first. It is a dark brown or perhaps a deep gray. It shows the stains of wood smoke and the earth of the fields. This second layer adds to the bulk of your frame. You feel your movements becoming slower and more deliberate. You are becoming a padded creature. This is the layering system that your ancestors perfected over many centuries. Each layer creates a pocket of air. Dead air is the best insulator known to man. By wearing multiple garments, you create a thermal barrier that a single heavy coat could never provide. You tie a leather belt around your waist. This cinches the tunics close to your body. It prevents the cold drafts from swirling up from the bottom of the hem. It also gives you a place to hang your small iron knife and your pouch of personal belongings. Now you must address your legs. You sit back down on the edge of the pallet to pull on your hose. These are not like modern socks. They are two separate sleeves of heavy wool fabric. They reach from your ankles all the way up to your thighs. You pull them on one at a time. They are tight and stiff. They have to be. If they sag or bunch up, they will rub your skin and cause painful blisters while you work. You use small cords made of linen to tie the tops of the hose to the waistband of your undergarments. This is a slow and frustrating process in the dark. Your fingers are already stiff with the morning chill. You fumble with the knots, but you do not rush the task. A loose knot means a cold leg and a miserable day in the fields. Once the hose are secure, you pull on your thick woolen socks. These have been knitted by the women of your house during the long autumn evenings. They are dense and rough. They feel like a second skin. The most important piece of clothing for a person in your position is the hood. You pick up the heavy woolen cowl from the floor. It covers your shoulders like a short cape and has a deep hood that can be pulled far forward over your face. You slide it over your head. This garment is your primary defense against the wind. It has a long tail of fabric that hangs from the back. You can wrap this tail around your neck like a scarf if the wind begins to howl across the open fields. The hood protects your neck and the base of your skull. These are the areas where the human body loses heat the fastest. With the hood up, the world becomes quiet. The thick wool muffles the sound of the wind and the barking of the dogs. It creates a private and warm microclimate for your head. You can breathe into the space in front of your face, and your own warm breath helps to take the sting out of the freezing air. Then you must consider your feet. You do not have sturdy boots with thick soles. You have simple shoes made of goat skin or cow hide. The leather is thin and flexible. It offers almost no insulation against the frozen ground. To survive the day, you must use a trick passed down through the generations. You take a large handful of dried moss and straw from a pile near the hearth. You stuff this material into the bottom of your shoes. You pack it down firmly with your hand. This creates a buffer between your feet and the icy earth. You slide your feet into the shoes. It feels crunchy and strange at first, but as you stand up, you realize that the straw is keeping your soles away from the frost. If the snow outside is deep, you might step into your wooden clogs. These are heavy overshoes carved from a single piece of willow wood. They raise you 2 inches off the ground. They are clumsy and loud to walk in, but they keep your leather shoes from getting soaked in the freezing slush. Wet feet in this century are not just an inconvenience. They are a threat to your very life. Finally, you reach for your mittens. They are not the five-fingered gloves of the nobility. They are simple pouches for your hands with a separate section for the thumb. They are made of felted wool. Felting is the process of washing wool in hot water and scrubbing it until the fibers lock together into a solid mat. This creates a fabric that is almost entirely windproof. You pull them on. Your hands feel large and useless, but they are warm and safe. You can still grip the heavy handle of an axe or the leather reins of an ox. That is all that matters for the work ahead. You look at yourself in the dim and flickering light. You are twice as thick as you were when you woke up. You are a walking fortress of fiber and oil. These clothes are your most valuable possessions. They were not bought in a shop or traded for easily. Every single thread was spun on a hand spindle. Every inch of fabric was woven on a heavy wooden loom. It took hundreds of hours of patient labor to create the outfit you are wearing. You treat these garments with a reverence that has been lost in the modern age. You do not wash them often. To wash wool is to risk shrinking the garment or stripping away the precious lanolin that keeps you dry. Instead, you brush away the dried mud with a stiff brush. You hang them near the fire to smoke out the odors of the day. The smell of you is the smell of the medieval world. It is the scent of sheep and wood smoke. It is the scent of old sweat and the damp earth. To you, this is the smell of safety and survival. As you step out of the door and into the biting wind, you feel the weight of the wool. It is heavy on your shoulders. It resists your movements. It makes every step an effort of will. But this weight is a comfort to your soul. It is a constant and physical reminder that you are protected. The wind hits you with a sudden force, but it does not reach your skin. It dies in the tangles of the woolen fibers. The cold tries to find a gap in your defenses, but you have cinched your belt tight and you have tied your points and you have wrapped your hood. You are sealed away from the elements. You are a warm hearth wrapped in layers of fabric. Think of the months of labor that went into the garment you wear. In the long evenings of the previous year, the women of your family sat by the small fire. You can still hear the rhythmic whirring of the wooden spindle. You can see the flicker of the flame reflecting in their tired eyes as they pulled the raw fleece into a consistent thread. They picked out bits of straw and dried burrs with their nimble fingers. They twisted the fiber until it was strong enough to hold. This was a task that never ended. Every spare moment of their lives was filled with the act of spinning. To have enough yarn for a single tunic required miles of thread. Then came the work of the loom. You remember the steady clatter of the shuttle passing back and forth. You remember the tension of the warp and the weft. This fabric is a map of their patience and their love for you. When you wear it, you are literally wrapped in the time and the care of your family. It is a physical manifestation of the bond that keeps you all alive. In the bitter cold of a winter morning, this thought provides a different kind of warmth that no fire can match. Your tunic is not a bright or vibrant color. Those expensive dyes are reserved for the lords and the ladies who dwell in the high stone castles. Your clothes are the colors of the forest and the open field. You might have a tunic dyed with woad, giving it a muted and earthy blue color. Or perhaps it was dyed with the roots of the madder plant to produce a rusty and brick red hue. Most of your items are simply the color of the sheep themselves. You see creams and tans and deep browns. These colors are practical. They do not show the dirt of the farm. They blend into the shadows of the cottage. They make you a part of the landscape. To wear these colors is to accept your place in the cycle of the seasons. You are a person of the earth, and your skin is covered in the own palette of the earth. This is how you survive the coldest nights and the hardest mornings. You do not fight the cold with fire alone. You fight it with the slow and patient labor of the spinning wheel and the loom. You carry your house on your back. You wear the history of your flock and the work of your family. The weight of the wool is the weight of life itself. As long as the fabric holds together, and as long as the knots stay tied, you will live to see the return of the spring. You turn your face toward the rising sun while the hood shields your cheeks. You take a deep breath of the frozen air and you begin the long work of the day. You are heavy, you are itchy, and you are warm. That is enough. The fire has sunken into a low, pulsing mound of orange embers. The heat that once pushed back the shadows has retreated, leaving the corners of your small hut to the dominion of the frost. You can feel the temperature dropping by the minute. The air against your cheeks is no longer just cool. It is sharp, like the edge of a dull knife. Your breath plumes in front of your face, a ghostly white mist that vanishes into the rafters. It is time to seek the only source of warmth left to you. It is time to leave the hearth and join the rest of your family in the only place where the winter cannot reach you easily. You move across the packed dirt floor toward the raised wooden platform in the corner of the room. This is the great communal bed. In your modern mind, the idea of a bed might evoke images of soft pillows, individual duvets, and a private sanctuary for one or two people. But for you, a peasant in the deep heart of winter, privacy is a luxury you cannot afford, and quite frankly, it is a concept you would find dangerous. Privacy is cold. Privacy is where the heat escapes. To survive a night where the water in the bucket has already begun to skim over with ice, you need the bodies of your kin. As you approach the bed, the first thing you hear is the rustle. The mattress is not made of foam or feathers. It is a massive sack made of heavy, coarse linen, known as a tick, and it is stuffed to bursting with straw, hay, or perhaps dried bracken. As you sit on the edge, the sound is deafening in the quiet of the hut. It is a dry, frantic crackling that tells you exactly what is inside. Every time someone moves, the straw shifts and snaps. It is a living, breathing thing. You reach out and feel the texture. Through the thick linen, you can feel the stalks poking through. This is not a surface designed for comfort as you understand it. It is a surface designed for insulation. You begin to peel back the heavy layers of covering. There are no light cotton sheets here. Instead, you pull back a massive, heavy blanket of boiled wool. It is thick, scratchy, and carries the faint, oily scent of lanolin, the natural grease of the sheep. On top of that is a coverlet made of animal skins, perhaps several deer hides or a heavy cowhide sewn together. The weight of these layers is immense. They are designed to trap every single calorie of heat your body produces, pinning it against your skin so it cannot escape into the hungry air of the room. You slide into the bed, and immediately you are not alone. To your left, your wife is already curled into a tight ball. To your right, your eldest son is fast asleep. Tucked between the adults are the smaller children, huddled like kittens in the center of the pile. This is the geometry of survival. The children are placed in the middle because they are the most vulnerable. They are the small furnaces that need the most protection, and by surrounding them with the larger bodies of the adults, you create a core of heat that stays constant throughout the night. You do not sleep side by side with a polite gap between you. You sleep in a tangle of limbs. Your arm might be draped over a shoulder. Your legs might be intertwined with another pair of legs to share the warmth of the lower extremities. In the medieval world, the communal bed is a knot of humanity. You feel the rhythmic rise and fall of your wife's chest against your back. You feel the heat radiating from your son's side. This is the thermal mass. A single human body produces about 100 watts of heat. In this bed, there are 5 or 6 of you. Together, you are a 500-watt heater tucked under a heavy layer of wool and fur. The smell is the next thing that settles over you. It is a dense, earthy aroma. It is the smell of unwashed wool, of wood smoke that has permeated your skin and hair, and the musk of several people who have spent the day working in the fields or the barn. To a modern nose, it might be overwhelming, but to you, it is the smell of safety. It is the smell of your tribe. There is a deep, primal comfort in the scent of your family. It signals that you are not alone in the dark, that there are others here to keep the night at bay. But the communal bed is not just a place of warmth. It is also a place of constant, itchy battle. As you settle in, you feel the first tickle against your ankle, then another on your neck. You are not the only living things in this straw. The warmth you are generating is a beacon for the invisible inhabitants of the hut. Fleas, lice, and bedbugs are an inescapable reality of your life. They live in the straw of the mattress, waiting for the vibration of a body to signal that dinner is served. You reach down and scratch a blooming itch on your calf, but you do not dwell on it. To complain about the bugs would be like complaining about the rain or the wind. They are simply part of the fabric of the world. You learn to sleep through the biting. You learn to ignore the tiny movements within the straw. You pull the heavy wool blanket up over your head, creating a small, warm cave of your own breath. The air inside this pocket is thick and stale, but it is warm, and that is all that matters. As the hours of the night grind on, the silence of the hut is broken only by the sounds of the family. There is the occasional cough, the grinding of teeth, and the soft murmurs of someone caught in a dream. Sometimes the straw mattress lets out a particularly loud groan as someone rolls over. Because you are all so tightly packed, a single person's movement is a collective event. If your son on the end decides to turn to his other side, the entire row of bodies must adjust. It is a slow, sleepy ripple that moves through the bed, a communal shifting of weight that happens without anyone ever truly waking up. You think about the world outside your walls. Somewhere out there, in the woods, the wolves are huddling together in much the same way. The livestock in the lean-to attached to your hut are pressed flank to flank, their collective breath turning to frost on the timber. You are no different from them. In the face of a medieval winter, the high-minded ideals of human individuality fall away, replaced by the ancient, animal necessity of the huddle. There is also a psychological warmth to this arrangement. The medieval night is a terrifying place. It is a time of spirits, of demons, and of the unknown. The darkness is total. If you were to open your eyes and look toward the window, you would see nothing but a void. But here, in the bed, you can feel the physical presence of your world. The touch of another human being is a constant reminder that you exist, that you are part of a whole. It wards off the crushing isolation that the cold tries to impose. You might wonder how you manage to stay in such close quarters for 10 or 12 hours at a stretch. The winter nights are long, and since candles are expensive and oil is scarce, you go to bed when the light fails and you stay there until the sun returns. This means you spend nearly half your life in this bed during the winter months. It becomes a theater of family life. You tell stories in the dark before sleep takes you. You hear the elders whispering about the harvests of the past. You hear the children asking questions about the stars. The bed is the school, the church, and the hearth all rolled into one. The weight of the blankets is a comfort. Modern bedding is light and airy, designed to feel like a cloud. Medieval bedding is designed to feel like the earth itself. Presses down on you, grounding you, making it difficult to move. This heaviness serves a purpose, keeps the drafts from snaking their way under the edges. You have tucked the perimeter of the blankets under the mattress, sealing yourself into a cocoon. If you were to pull an arm out into the open air, the shock of the cold would be like dipping your limb into a bucket of ice water. So you stay tucked, your chin pressed against the scratchy wool of your tunic. As you drift on the edge of sleep, you are aware of the hierarchy of the bed. If there is a guest, a traveler who has been granted a place to stay, they are often placed on the outer edge. They are the barrier between the family and the cold air of the room. It is a harsh hospitality, but a hospitality nonetheless. They share in the heat, but they pay for it by being the first to feel the draft. You, in the center, are shielded by your wife and your walls. The straw beneath you begins to settle. Over the weeks and months, the straw breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces, turning almost into a kind of dusty chaff. This dust gets into your lungs, causing you to cough in the night. It is another trade-off. The straw provides the loft that traps the air and keeps you warm, but it also slowly disintegrates, filling the air with fine particles of dried grass. Every few weeks, if the weather permits, the tick will be emptied, the old straw used for animal bedding or burned, and fresh, golden straw will be stuffed back in, bringing with it the sweet summer smell of the fields. But tonight, the straw is old and flat. You can feel the hard wood of the platform beneath you in certain places where your hip has pushed through the padding. You shift slightly, trying to find a more comfortable pocket. Beside you, your daughter stirs, her small hand reaching out and clutching your tunic in her sleep. You realize that in this moment, despite the cold, despite the bugs, and despite the hunger that always lingers at the edge of your stomach in January, you are safe. The communal bed is the ultimate fortress. It is a wall made of flesh and wool. As long as you stay together, as long as you remain a single breathing mass of humanity, the winter cannot kill you. You close your eyes, the sound of the wind howling through the thatch above becoming nothing more than a distant lullaby. The heat of the person next to you is a promise. It is the promise that you will wake up when the gray light of dawn finally touches the frost on the walls. You surrender to the heaviness, falling into a deep, dreamless sleep, wrapped in the tangled limbs of those you love. The silence of the night is broken not by a sound, but by a sensation. It is the sensation of the world turning sharp. The warmth that had been your only shield against the winter has begun to retreat. You stir in the darkness, your breath forming a faint, ghostly mist that you can feel more than see. The pile of bodies around you, your family, your life, remains heavy and still, but the air above the blankets has become an enemy. You reach out a hand, feeling for the edge of the hearth. There is no glow. The vibrant, dancing oranges and yellows of the evening have collapsed into a dull, sulking red. The fire is dying, and in a medieval winter, a dead fire is a death sentence. You realize with a jolt of anxiety that the wood stack in the corner is nearly empty. There are only a few splintered sticks of grayish birch and a handful of dry gorse left. It will not last until the sun is high enough to provide any comfort. This is the reality of your existence. You do not just live day to day. You live spark to spark. To survive the coldest nights, you must become a scavenger. You must become a hunter, not of meat, but of heat. As the first gray light of dawn begins to bleed through the cracks in your wattle and daub walls, you prepare yourself for the most grueling task of the winter day. You wrap your feet in extra strips of coarse wool, binding them tight with leather thongs. You pull a heavy, grease-stained tunic over your shoulders, the smell of old smoke and lanolin clinging to the fibers. You step outside, and the cold hits you like a physical blow. It is a dry, scouring wind that seems to want to peel the skin from your cheekbones. You look toward the forest. To a modern eye, those woods look like a bounty of endless fuel. To you, they look like a fortress. You cannot simply walk into the deep woods and chop down an oak tree. In this world, every branch, every trunk, and every twig belongs to someone. Most of the time, that someone is the lord of the manor or the king himself. The forest is not a wilderness to be used at will. It is a legal jurisdiction. The trees are his. The deer are his. Even the dead wood on the ground is often restricted. You carry with you a long wooden pole with a curved iron blade at the end. This is your lifeline. You are heading out to exercise your right of estover. This is a legal term you know by heart, even if you cannot read it on a piece of parchment. It is the right of the poor to gather wood for fuel. But there is a catch. You are often forbidden from using an axe. An axe implies you are cutting down standing timber, which is a crime that could cost you a hand or a heavy fine you could never hope to pay. Instead, you must gather wood by hook or by crook. This is where that phrase comes from. You use your shepherd's crook or your hooked pole to reach up into the canopy and pull down the dead, brittle branches that the wind has not yet claimed. You scan the ground for anything the heavy snow has snapped off. The work is exhausting. The snow is knee-deep in the drifts, and every step requires you to lift your leg high, burning through the meager calories you gained from your morning pottage. Your fingers, despite the woolen mittens, quickly go numb. You have to keep moving. If you stop moving, the dampness from the snow will seep into your boots and begin to freeze your toes. You find a fallen ash limb, half buried in a drift. You clear the snow with your hands, your skin turning a dark, angry red. It is heavy, waterlogged, and stubborn. You know that if you try to burn this now, it will only hiss and spit, filling your small hut with a thick, acrid smoke that will make your eyes weep and your lungs burn. But you have no choice. You haul it onto your back, securing it with a hemp rope that bites into your shoulders. As you struggle back toward the village, you see your neighbors. They are in the same desperate hunt. Some are not even in the woods. They are out in the marshy lowlands, where the ground stays soft even in a freeze. They are cutting peat. If you live in a region without heavy forests, peat is your gold. It is the compressed, rotted vegetation of 1,000 years, sliced out of the earth in dark, wet bricks. It takes months to dry peat properly, but in a winter this long, many are desperate enough to try and burn it damp. The smell of a peat fire is something you will never forget. It is earthy, sweet, and heavy, hanging over the village like a thick blanket. It doesn't flame like wood. It glows with a low, intense heat that can last for hours if managed correctly. But what if you have no peat and the Lord's foresters are being particularly cruel this year? You look toward the pastures. There, under the snow, lies the humblest fuel of all, animal dung. In the summer, the children go out with baskets to collect the waste of the cows and sheep. They mix it with straw, pat it into flat discs, and let them bake in the sun until they are hard as stone. These dung cakes are the fuel of the truly desperate. They burn slow and steady. The smell is not as foul as you might imagine once they are dried, but it is a constant reminder of the thin line you walk between survival and ruin. You finally reach your doorway, your breath coming in ragged gasps. You drop the load of wood, the sound of the heavy branches hitting the frozen earth echoing off the neighboring huts. You cannot go inside yet. You have to break the wood into manageable pieces. You use a heavy stone to bash the frozen branches, snapping them where the rot has set in. Every piece is precious. You count them like coins. This branch for the evening meal, this thick knot of oak for the deep middle of the night, these thin twigs to coax the embers back to life. Inside the hut, the task of fire management is a constant low-level war. You do not have matches. You do not have lighters. If your fire goes out completely, you have to use a flint and a piece of steel, striking them together over a bed of charred linen or dried moss until a single, tiny spark takes hold. It can take minutes of frantic blowing and hovering to turn that spark into a flame. Or, you must walk to a neighbor's house with a ceramic pot and beg for a shovel full of their live coals, carrying the fire through the cold like a sacred relic. This is why the curfew is so important. The word itself comes from the French phrase couvre-feu, which means cover the fire. When the village bell rings at dusk, it is not just a signal to go to sleep. It is a legal and practical instruction. You take a large, ventilated ceramic bowl or a heavy metal cover and place it over the glowing embers of your hearth. This starves the fire of just enough oxygen to keep it from raging, but lets it smolder safely through the night. It prevents the sparks from landing on the dry straw of your bedding or the thatch of your roof while you sleep. Most importantly, it preserves the fire for the morning. When you lift that cover at dawn, you hope to see the soft, pulsing red of a coal that has survived the night. You sit now by your hearth, feeding a few precious slivers of the wood you gathered into the center of the gray ash. You blow gently, your cheeks puffing out, until a tiny tongue of blue and yellow licks upward. The relief that washes over you is better than any food. The heat begins to radiate, first touching your face, then your chest. You know that tomorrow you will have to do it all over again. You will have to fight the wind, the snow, and the laws of the land just to keep this small circle of warmth alive. You look at your hands. They are calloused, stained with soot, and scarred from the rough bark and the biting cold. They are the hands of a person who understands that heat is not a right. It is a prize won through labor. In the modern world, warmth is invisible, comes through pipes and wires. But for you, warmth has a weight. It has a scent. It has a cost that is measured in the ache of your muscles and the constant, nagging worry in the back of your mind. As the room begins to brighten with the growing flame, you see the shadows of your family dancing on the walls. For now, the cold is held at bay. The desperate hunt for fuel has been successful for one more day. But the winter is long, and the forest is deep, and the sparks are always trying to escape. You lean back against the wall, watching the fire eat into a piece of the ash which you worked so hard to bring home, feeling the temporary, beautiful victory of a warm hearth in a frozen world. You close your eyes for just a moment, listening to the crackle of the wood, knowing that the battle for survival never truly ends until the first green buds of spring finally break through the ice. You take a seat on a low wooden bench, your back against the timber wall of your cottage, feeling the chill of the stones seep through your thick wool tunic. Your breath blooms in the air, a white ghost that reminds you that you are alive, but only just. Outside, the wind howls like a starving wolf, pressing its icy weight against the thatch of your roof. But inside, you have a different kind of wolf to contend with. It is the hunger that gnaws at your ribs, a persistent, hollow ache that only the hard work of the harvest could have prepared you for. In this age, your stomach is not just a place for digestion. It is your furnace. To survive the frozen months of January and February, you must keep that internal fire stoked. If your energy fails, your body will give up its warmth to the hungry night, and you will not wake to see the morning light. You reach for your wooden bowl, which has been smoothed by years of use and the oils of 1,000 meals. It is warm to the touch, and you wrap your frost-nipped fingers around it, drawing in the heat before you even take a bite. This is your lifeline. This is the pottage. It is a thick, slow-cooked stew that has been simmering over the central hearth for hours, perhaps even days. In a peasant household, the pottage pot is rarely empty. You simply add what you have day after day, keeping the mixture bubbling so the rot cannot take hold. It is the smell of survival, a dense, earthy aroma of dried peas, leeks, and the faint, salty tang of preserved fat. As you lift the spoon to your lips, you feel the steam dampen your face. This pottage is mostly made of grains and legumes, the humble crops you spent your summer sweating over. You taste the gray peas and the broad beans, which were dried in the sun months ago and stored in linen sacks hanging from the rafters to keep them away from the mice. They have been boiled until they are soft and mushy, creating a thick base that sticks to your ribs. There are no exotic spices here. You have salt if you were lucky enough to afford it or trade for it, and perhaps some dried herbs from the garden like parsley, sage, or savory. It is humble, it is repetitive, but it is fuel. Every spoonful is a log tossed onto the fire of your metabolism. You know that your body is working harder now than it does in the summer. Even when you are sitting still, your heart beats to keep your blood moving, to keep your core from freezing. This requires calories, a word you do not know, but a concept you understand intimately through the language of fatigue. To keep that furnace burning, you need fat. You look toward the ceiling, where a small, shriveled side of bacon hangs near the chimney. This is your treasure. It was a pig you slaughtered back in November, during the time of Martmas, when the frost first hardened the ground. You could not afford to feed the pig through the winter, so you gave it a quick end and preserved every precious inch of its body in salt and smoke. You take a small piece of that salt pork and drop it into your bowl. As the hot broth melts the white fat, you watch the oil slicks rise to the surface, shimmering in the firelight. This fat is pure energy. It is the most valuable thing in your pantry because it provides the long-burning heat your body craves. When you eat it, you can almost feel the warmth spreading from your stomach out to your toes and fingertips. It is a physical shield against the cold. Without that grease, without that lard, the winter would have claimed you weeks ago. Next to your bowl lies a hunk of bread. This is not the soft, white, pillowy bread of the nobility. This is maslin bread, a heavy, dark loaf made from a mixture of rye and wheat, or perhaps barley if the wheat crop was poor. It is as hard as a stone and just as heavy. You have to dip it into your pottage to soften it, letting the crust soak up the liquid until it is pliable enough to chew. The bread is coarse, and you can feel the grit of the millstone against your teeth. It tastes of the earth and the smoke of the oven, but it is filling. It expands in your stomach, giving you a sense of fullness that helps drown out the whistling of the wind outside. You must be careful, though. You look at the grain bin in the corner and feel a pang of anxiety. The winter is long, and the store is finite. You have to calculate every meal. If you eat too much now, you will starve in March when the stores run dry but the first crops have not yet emerged. This is the delicate balance of the winter diet. You eat enough to stay warm, but never enough to feel truly satisfied. You live in a state of constant, low-level hunger, a physiological choice to ensure that the furnace stays lit until the spring. To wash down the pottage, you reach for a horn of small ale. This is not the potent, heady brew found in a city tavern. This is a thin, fermented drink made from the second or third straining of the grain. It is cloudy and slightly sour, but it is safer than the water from the well, which might be tainted. More importantly, it is liquid bread. It contains the fermented sugars of the barley, providing a quick burst of energy and a slight, dulling warmth to the senses. It helps you forget, for a moment, how cold the floor is, and how much your joints ache from the dampness. The ale is a comfort, a small mercy in a season of hardship. As you eat, you think of the garden that lies buried under a foot of snow. You manage to save some root vegetables before the ground turned to iron. You have onions, garlic, and perhaps some wrinkled carrots and parsnips stored in a pit filled with sand in the cellar. These additions to the pot provide the vitamins that keep the scurvy at bay, though you do not know the name of the disease. You only know that without the onions, your gums grow soft and your strength fades. You cherish the sharp bite of the onion in your pottage, a flavor that cuts through the blandness of the beans and reminds you of the living world. There are days, however, when the pottage is thin. On the coldest nights, when the wood supply is low and the wind is particularly cruel, you might find yourself eating nothing but a bowl of warmed ale and a crust of bread. You have heard stories from the elders about the Great Famine, years when the rain never stopped and the grain rotted in the fields. In those times, people were forced to grind acorns into a bitter, indigestible flour or mix sawdust into their dough to make it go further. You look at your bowl of peas and bacon and say a silent prayer of thanks. As long as the pottage is thick, you have a chance. The act of eating is communal. You share this meal with your family, huddled close together around the fire. You watch your children eat, their eyes wide and reflecting the orange glow of the embers. You give them the extra bits of fat, knowing that their smaller bodies lose heat faster than yours. There is a quietness to the winter meal. In the summer, there is laughter and talk of the fields, but in the winter, eating is a serious business. It is a ritual of fortification. Each swallow is a defiance of the frost. You are building a wall of calories between yourself and the void outside. As you scrape the bottom of your bowl, you feel the furnace in your belly begin to glow. The shivering that had been rattling your shoulders begins to subside. A pleasant, heavy lethargy settles over you. This is the goal. You want to go to sleep with a full stomach because digestion itself generates heat. As your body breaks down the complex starches of the beans and the dense fibers of the rye, it produces a gentle, internal warmth that will help carry you through the midnight hours when the fire in the hearth dies down to white ash. You set the bowl aside and wipe your mouth with the back of your hand. The meal is over, but its work is just beginning. The fat and the grain are now part of you, circulating through your veins, keeping your heart steady and your skin just warm enough to ward off the touch of the ice. You look at the empty pot and the dwindling side of bacon, knowing that tomorrow you will do this all over again. You will measure the grain, you will soak the peas, and you will pray that the winter ends before the food does. But for tonight, the wolf at the door is kept at bay. The furnace is stoked. You wrap your cloak tighter around your shoulders, feeling the heavy, solid presence of the pottage in your gut, and prepare to face the long, dark hours of the medieval night. You know that the cold is a thief always trying to steal the life from your limbs, but as long as you have the pottage, as long as you have the bread and the ale, you have a flame that no winter wind can blow out. You lean back, closing your eyes, listening to the silence of the snow, and feel the slow, steady burn of survival deep within your chest. This is the secret of the peasant. The strength to endure is found not just in the spirit, but in the humble, steaming contents of a wooden bowl. The toil of the long night. You feel the temperature drop before you see the evidence of it. It is that precise moment in the deep middle of the night when the earth seems to hold its breath and the frost begins to bloom in earnest across the gaps in your door. The fire, which had been a roaring, defiant beast during the evening meal, has now settled into a low, pulsing bed of orange jewels. It no longer casts a bright light across the room. Instead, it throws long, dancing shadows that stretch up the walls and vanish into the thick, soot-stained thatch of the rafters. You lie there in the dark, and you realize that for a medieval peasant, the night is not merely a time for rest. It is a secondary season of labor, a quiet and grueling shift where the work never truly stops. You shift your weight on the thin mattress of straw, feeling the prickly stems through the coarse linen of your undershirt. Beside you, your family is a huddle of shapes, a collective source of warmth that is your most precious resource. But the cold is a persistent thief. It steals the heat from your toes and numbs the tips of your fingers. You cannot simply sleep the winter away. To do so would be to let the hearth go cold, and a cold hearth in the dead of January is a death sentence. You sit up, the movement causing a chorus of rustling from the straw. The air in the hut is thick. It is a heavy mixture of wood smoke, the earthy scent of damp floor rushes, and the pungent, musky odor of the livestock huddled at the far end of the longhouse. You hear the low, rhythmic grinding of a cow chewing her cud and the occasional sharp clatter of a goat's hoof against a stone. These sounds are comforting. They mean the animals are alive, and their bodies are radiating the heat that helps keep the temperature inside the hut just a few degrees above the freezing world outside. Your first task is the fire. You move carefully, your feet finding the familiar path across the hard-packed earth. You do not want to wake the others, but you must tend to the embers. You use a small iron poker to stir the ashes, uncovering the glowing core. You add a few precious chunks of peat or a heavy log of oak, being careful not to use too much. Fuel is a currency you cannot afford to waste. You watch as a small blue flame licks at the new wood, eventually turning into a steady golden glow. This is the heartbeat of your home. As long as this light remains, the darkness of the forest and the bite of the wind are kept at bay. But you do not return to bed immediately. In this era, sleep is not the unbroken 8-hour block we know today. You are living in the time of the first and second sleep. It is a natural rhythm of the human body that has not yet been disrupted by the glare of electric lights. You have woken up after your first few hours of rest, and now, in the quiet watch of the midnight hour, there is work to be done. You reach into the shadows near the hearth and pull forward a basket of raw wool. It is greasy to the touch and smells of the fields. Even in the dim light, your hands know what to do. This is the toil of the long night. You take up the drop spindle, a simple wooden tool that has remained unchanged for centuries. With a flick of your wrist, the spindle begins to dance, spinning the chaotic mass of wool into a sturdy thread. The whirring sound it makes is a soft, hypnotic percussion against the silence. In the modern world, we think of the night as a vacuum, but for you, it is full of productivity. While the village outside is a frozen wasteland, inside this small circle of warmth, you are mending the fabric of your life. Perhaps you are stitching a tear in a heavy wool tunic or sharpening a tool by the light of a tallow candle. The candle is a luxury, made from the rendered fat of your own slaughtered animals. It sputters and smokes, casting a yellowish, wavering light that barely illuminates the work in your lap. It makes your eyes ache, but the necessity of the coming spring drives you forward. Every yard of yarn spun tonight is a yard that does not have to be done during the frantic planting season. As you work, your mind begins to wander. The silence of a medieval night is profound. There are no engines, no distant hum of electricity, and no white noise. There is only the wind howling through the eaves and the occasional crack of a tree limb snapping under the weight of ice in the woods nearby. It is a silence that invites stories. You find yourself thinking of the tales the elders told by this very hearth. Stories of the frost giants who breathe the winter into existence, or the spirits that wander the fields when the sun is gone. To you, the darkness is not empty. It is populated. You look up at the rafters, where the smoke hangs in a thick, stagnant layer. The shadows seem to shift and coalesce into shapes. Is that a bunch of dried herbs hanging from a beam? Or is it something else? You say a quick prayer or touch a protective charm hidden beneath your tunic. Survival in the winter is as much about spiritual fortitude as it is about physical warmth. You must keep your courage as high as your flame. You hear a soft cough from the bedding. Your youngest child has shifted, seeking the warmth of their mother. You put down the spindle and move to check on them. You tuck the heavy wool blankets tighter around their shoulders. These blankets are the result of hundreds of hours of labor, just like the work you were doing moments ago. They are heavy and scratchy, but they are a fortress. You feel the warmth radiating from the small body and a sense of fierce protection washes over you. This is why you endure the smoke that stings your eyes and the cold that makes your joints ache. The night drags on, and the cold reaches its peak. This is the hour when the frost creeps through the keyhole and the water in the bucket by the door develops a thin skin of ice. You take a moment to look out through a small, horn-covered window or a gap in the shutters. The world outside is a silver and blue landscape of moonlight and snow. It looks beautiful, but it is a lethal beauty. You know that if you were to step out there without your furs and your heavy boots, the cold would claim you in minutes. It makes your small, smoky hut feel like a palace. You return to your seat by the fire and take a sip of small ale from a wooden mug. It is cold and thin, but it provides a momentary distraction from the dryness in your throat caused by the hearth smoke. Your hands are tired now. The rhythm of the spindle slows. This is the transition point, the moment when the second sleep begins to pull at your eyelids. You have done your duty for the night. You have fed the fire, you have progressed with the spinning, and you have checked the livestock. Before you lie back down, you perform one final ritual. You cover the fire with a ceramic pot or a layer of ash. This is called the curfew, from the French words meaning cover fire. It prevents the logs from burning away too quickly while still keeping the embers alive until morning. It is a delicate balance. You want the heat to linger, but you need the fuel to last. As you slide back into the straw, the warmth of your family welcomes you. The second sleep is often the deepest. The work of the night has exhausted your body, and the relative safety of the fortified hearth allows your mind to drift. You close your eyes, and the sounds of the longhouse become a blurred tapestry. The cow's breath, the wind's roar, and the soft crackle of the hidden embers. You are a peasant in the heart of the Middle Ages, and you have survived another midnight vigil. You have turned the dead hours of the night into a time of creation and maintenance. As the first hint of gray begins to bleed into the eastern sky, you are already resting for the dawn, when the cycle of survival will begin all over again. The shadows on the rafters have retreated for now, but the toil of the long night has left its mark on the thread you spun and the warmth you preserved. You have held the line against the winter, one handful of wool and one log at a time. The sun will rise on a world still frozen, but inside these walls, the life you have carefully tended continues to burn, stubborn and bright. You step out of your doorway and the air hits you like a physical weight. It is not just cold. It is a presence that seeks the gaps in your tunic and the marrow in your bones. You look toward the center of the village where the stone tower of the parish church rises like a gray sentinel against a sky the color of hammered lead. This is where you go when your own fire is not enough. This is where the community gathers its warmth, both spiritual and physical. In the medieval world, the church is not merely a place of worship on Sundays. It is the heart of the village, the administrative center, the granary, and during the deepest freezes of January, it is the ultimate safety net. You walk through the crunching snow, your breath blooming in thick white clouds. Your neighbors are doing the same. Some carry empty sacks, others bring nothing but their shivering frames. You are heading toward the porch of the church, a stout stone structure that offers the first bit of relief from the biting wind. This is the realm of the parish wing, a system of charity that is as essential to your survival as the thatch over your head. In a world without government welfare or social security, the concept of caritas or Christian charity is the only thing standing between a poor family and a shallow grave in the frozen earth. As you approach the heavy oak doors, you see the local priest standing there. He is wrapped in heavy wool, his face ruddy from the frost. Beside him sits a large wooden chest reinforced with iron bands. This is the poor box. Throughout the year, those with a bit of extra coin have dropped farthings and pennies into this chest. Now, in the dead of winter, that accumulated wealth is being transformed into survival. The priest is not just a man of prayer today. He is an administrator of life. He knows every family in this parish. He knows whose cow died in November and whose granary was raided by damp rot. He knows who is truly desperate and who is merely struggling. You watch as an elderly widow steps forward. Her hands are gnarled and blue with cold. The priest reaches into a sack and hands her a loaf of coarse brown bread and a small bundle of tallow candles. This is the dole. It is a formal distribution of resources that happens with rhythmic regularity. On certain feast days or during particularly brutal cold snaps, the church doors become a hub of redistribution. You see, the medieval church is a massive landowner. 1/10 of everything produced in this village, the tithe, has been collected and stored in the great tithe barn. While much of that grain goes to support the higher clergy and the cathedral, a vital portion is reserved for the local poor. Inside the church, the air is still freezing, but the wind cannot reach you. The thick stone walls act as a thermal mass, holding a hint of the earth's internal temperature. You see people huddled in the nave. In the medieval period, the nave is a public space. It is used for markets, meetings, and in times of extreme weather, as a sanctuary for those whose own hovels have become uninhabitable. There are no pews yet. The floor is covered in fresh straw or rushes, which provides a meager layer of insulation against the cold stone flags. You see a group of travelers in the corner, men who were caught on the road when the blizzard hit. They have been granted hospitality, a sacred duty that the church takes very seriously. The concept of the 7 corporal works of mercy governs the actions you see around you. To feed the hungry, to give drink to the thirsty, to clothe the naked, and to harbor the harborless. These are not just suggestions. For the wealthy lords and the prosperous farmers of your village, performing these acts is a matter of life and death for their own souls. They believe that their time in purgatory will be shortened by every loaf of bread they provide to you during the frost. This creates a strange and powerful social contract. The rich give because they fear the fire of the afterlife, and the poor receive so they can survive the frost of this one. You move toward the side of the church where a small fire has been lit in a brazier. This is a rare sight, as fire is a constant danger to the timber roof, but the cold is so severe that the priest has allowed it. Around the glowing coals, you hear the low murmur of voices. People are sharing news of the roads and the state of the livestock. There is a psychological warmth here that is just as important as the physical heat. Isolation is one of the greatest dangers of a medieval winter. When you are trapped in your small hut, listening to the timber groan under the weight of the snow, it is easy to succumb to despair. But here, under the parish wing, you are part of a body. You are reminded that you are not alone in this struggle. The charity of the cold extends beyond the church walls as well. You think of the local monastery, perhaps a few miles down the road. If the village resources were to fail completely, the monastery would be the next line of defense. Monasteries are the great hotels and hospitals of the Middle Ages. They have guest houses called xenodokia, specifically designed to house the poor and the wandering. The monks there follow the rule of Saint Benedict, which dictates that all guests should be received as if they were Christ himself. In the deep winter, the monks would spend hours over large cauldrons, brewing pottage made of dried peas, leeks, and perhaps a bit of salted bacon to be distributed at the gate. You see a young man from the neighboring farm carrying a heavy log toward the church house. This is another form of charity, the gift of fuel. In your village, the rites to gather wood in the Lord's forest are strictly regulated. But often, during a great frost, the Lord will grant a grace period, allowing the poor to gather dead wood or windfall to keep the communal fires burning. This is the beauty of the medieval system of charity. It is local, it is personal, and it is immediate. The person giving the bread knows the name of the person receiving it. They probably knew their father and their grandfather. However, do not imagine that this charity is without its edges. It is often conditional. To receive the dole, you are expected to be a person of good standing in the eyes of the priest. The church uses this power to enforce social order. The idle or the rowdy might find their portion smaller than the pious and the hardworking. There is a constant tension between the deserving poor and the sturdy beggars. But when the temperature drops to the point where the beer freezes in the barrel and the birds fall dead from the trees, those distinctions often melt away in the face of sheer human necessity. As the afternoon light begins to fail, turning the snow outside to a ghostly blue, the priest begins a short service. You stand with your neighbors, your feet numb but your belly a little fuller from a crust of bread. The Latin words of the liturgy wash over you. You might not understand every word, but you understand the tone. It is a tone of endurance. It is a reminder that winter is a season of the soul as much as it is a season of the climate. The candles flickering on the altar represent the light that the darkness cannot overcome. This spiritual comfort is a vital part of surviving the cold. It provides the mental fortitude to keep going when your firewood is low and the nights seem endless. Before you leave to return to your cottage, you help an old man wrap his feet in extra layers of wool scraps provided by the church warden. These scraps were collected from the local weavers, bits of waste that have been repurposed into life-saving insulation. This is the medieval economy of survival, where nothing is wasted and everything is shared because the stakes are so incredibly high. You step back out into the freezing air, but you feel a little stronger. You have a few more candles, a bit more bread, and the knowledge that the parish is watching over you. The church tower fades into the gloom behind you as you walk back. You think about the great barns filled with grain and the iron-bound chest filled with pennies. You think about the monks at their prayers and the priest at his ledger. In the modern world, we might see these things as relics of a distant past, but for you, in this moment, they are the very pillars of the world. They are the structures that turn a collection of isolated, freezing individuals into a community that can withstand the worst that nature can throw at it. The wind picks up, swirling the snow into blinding eddies, but you keep your eyes on the small light in your own window. You have survived another day of the great cold, not just through your own labor, but through the collective will of the parish. The charity of the winter is a hard, practical thing. It is not always enough, and many will still perish before the first primrose appears in the thaw. But for tonight, the wing of the church has provided a shadow of protection, a small sanctuary of warmth in a world of ice. You reach your door, lift the latch, and step back into the small, smoky world of your home, carrying the warmth of the parish with you like a hidden coal. The night is coming, and it will be bitter, but the bond of the village remains unbroken. You wake up before the light has even dared to touch the horizon. The air inside your small cottage is thick, heavy with the scent of damp earth, unwashed wool, and the lingering, acrid tang of wood smoke. You try to move, but your body protests. Your joints feel as though they have been fused together by the very ice that rime coats the small, shuttered window. This is the reality of a medieval winter. It is not a picturesque scene from a tapestry. It is a slow, grinding battle against a physical environment that wants to seep into your bones and stay there until the spring thaw. As you sit up on your pallet of straw, the first thing you notice is the weight of your own breath. In the middle of a freezing night, the moisture from your lungs has nowhere to go. It rises, hits the cold underside of the thatched roof, and condenses. Sometimes, if the frost is deep enough, it falls back down as a fine, icy mist. More often, it simply turns the thatch into a heavy, sodden sponge. You reach out a hand to steady yourself and feel the wall. The wattle and daub, a mixture of mud, straw, and dung, feels clammy and slick. In some corners, a gray, fuzzy mold has begun to claim the space. You can smell it. It is a flat, earthy scent of decay that competes with the smoke for dominance in the air. This dampness is your shadow. It follows you from the fields into the house and follows you from the house back to the fields. In the medieval world, there is no such thing as truly drying out. Your clothes are made of heavy wool and coarse linen. Once they get wet from a day of hauling wood through a sleet storm, they stay damp for days. You hang them near the central hearth, but the fire is low and the air is too humid for the water to evaporate. You put your tunic back on in the morning and it feels cold and heavy against your skin, stealing the little body heat you managed to preserve under your sheepskin blankets. This constant moisture leads to the first great misery of the winter season, the ache in the bones. You might be only 30 years old, but in the depths of February you feel 80. The modern world calls it osteoarthritis or rheumatism, but to you it is simply the winter bite. Settles in your knees, your lower back, and your knuckles. Every movement is accompanied by a dull, throbbing pain that never quite goes away. You see the elders of the village hunched over, their hands gnarled like the roots of an old oak tree, and you know that this is your future. The cold dampness of the floor and the walls draws the warmth out of your marrow, leaving behind a stiffness that makes the heavy labor of winter life an exercise in pure endurance. But the aches in your joints are nothing compared to the war being waged in your lungs. You look toward the center of the room where the embers of the fire are glowing. There is no chimney in your home. That is a luxury for the lords and the wealthy merchants. Instead, the smoke rises and swirls around the rafters, eventually finding its way out through a small hole in the thatch or through the gaps in the eaves. In the summer, this is manageable. But in the winter, when you have to keep the door shut and the shutters tight to keep from freezing, the house becomes a smoke box. You have lived with this smoke your entire life. It has stained the thatch black and coated every beam in a layer of soot. It has also coated your lungs. You hear it in the darkness of the night. It is a sound that defines the medieval winter, the communal cough. It starts in one corner of the house, a dry, hacking rasp from your youngest child. Then your spouse takes it up, a deep, wet rattle that sounds like gravel turning in a bucket. Soon, the entire household is coughing in a ragged, discordant rhythm. Physicians of your time might talk about an imbalance of the humors, perhaps too much cold phlegm in the chest, but you only know that your chest feels tight and your throat is constantly raw. This is the fire cough. For months on end, you are breathing in particulates from oak, peat, or dry dung. This chronic irritation weakens your defenses. When a true winter fever or a bout of influenza sweeps through the village, it finds a population already struggling to draw a clear breath. What we would today treat with a simple course of antibiotics or even just rest and hydration becomes a life or death struggle. Pneumonia is a silent thief. It moves through the damp, smoky air of the village, and by the time the snow melts, there will be fresh mounds in the churchyard for those whose lungs simply gave out under the strain. You stand up and feel the sting of another winter companion, the chilblains. Your feet have been cold for 3 months. Not just chilly, but a deep, numbing cold that has turned your toes a dark, angry purple. As you move closer to the fire to warm them, the pain becomes excruciating. The sudden heat causes the small blood vessels in your skin to expand too quickly, leading to itching, swelling, and burning sores. You try not to scratch them, but the itch is maddening. If the skin breaks, the filth of the floor will get in, and then you face the very real threat of infection. In a world without antiseptic, a small sore on a toe can lead to a red streak up the leg, a fever, and a quick end. You wrap your feet in scraps of old linen, trying to provide some cushion against your hard leather shoes. The shoes themselves are a problem. They are not waterproof. They are made of turned leather that soaks up the slush of the village path like a sponge. Inside the shoe, your foot remains in a state of perpetual wetness. This leads to fungal infections that rot the skin between your toes, a condition you might call the water rot. It is itchy, painful, and smells of sour yeast. But there is no medicine for it, only the hope that a dry day might come so you can let your feet breathe by the fire. As the sun begins to provide a pale, heatless light through the cracks in the walls, you see the other inhabitants of your home stirring. It is not just your family. The livestock are here too, huddled at the far end of the longhouse. Their presence provides vital warmth, but they bring their own complications. The smell of manure and animal sweat mixes with the smoke. Their breath adds even more moisture to the air. And where there are animals and damp straw, there are parasites. In the winter, the lice and the fleas become your constant companions. You cannot escape them. They hide in the seams of your woolens and in the straw of your bedding. During the day, the cold might keep them sluggish, but as soon as you crawl under your blankets and your body heat begins to build, they wake up. You spend your nights scratching, your skin covered in small, red welts. It is a miserable, biting irritation that prevents deep sleep. Beyond the discomfort, these insects are carriers. While the Great Plague is the most famous example, winter is a season of typhus and other fevers spread by the very vermin that seek the warmth of your body. You are a walking ecosystem, and in the winter, the balance of that ecosystem tilts heavily toward the parasites. The damp also attacks your food. You look toward the stores hanging from the rafters. The salt pork is sweating in the humidity. The grain in the bin must be checked daily. If the damp gets in, the grain will sprout, or worse, it will mold. There is a particular danger in the rye. If it becomes too wet, a fungus called ergot can grow. It looks like small, black spurs on the grain. If you are desperate enough to grind that grain into flour, the results are horrific. You will suffer from what the village calls St. Anthony's fire. Your limbs will feel like they are burning in an invisible flame. You will suffer from terrifying hallucinations, and eventually, your blackened, gangrenous toes and fingers may simply drop off. You carefully pick through the grain, praying that the damp has not claimed your only source of bread. The psychological toll of this physical decay cannot be understated. To live in a world where you are constantly damp, constantly aching, and constantly surrounded by the sounds of illness is a heavy burden. The darkness of the winter days is reflected in the physical gloom of your home. You feel a heaviness of the spirit, a lethargy that makes every chore feel like climbing a mountain. You are tired, but you cannot sleep because of the cold and the itching. You are hungry, but the food is bland and sometimes suspicious. Your body is failing you in small ways every day. You step outside, the cold air hitting your lungs like a physical blow. It is sharp and clean compared to the soup of smoke inside, but it is also dangerous. You pull your hood tight. You have to keep moving. If you stop, the cold will settle back into your joints and the damp will begin its slow, creeping work once again. You look at your neighbors, their faces pale and drawn, their eyes rimmed with red from the smoke. You exchange a nod, a silent acknowledgement of the shared struggle. You are all survivors of the frost's bite, carrying the scars of the damp in your rattling chests and your aching bones, waiting for the first sign of green that will signal an end to this long, wet siege. Your body is a map of the winter, marked by the fire, the mold, and the ice. You take a breath, feeling the rasp in your throat, and begin the day's work. The winter has not broken you yet, but the battle is written in every movement you make. You sit in the absolute darkness of your hovel, and you listen. The wind is no longer just the movement of air. To your ears, it has transformed. It is a rhythmic, pulsing howl that sounds less like a storm and more like a chorus of screaming voices. In the modern world, you might call this the Bernoulli effect or the whistling of wind through the thatch. But you are not a modern person. You are a peasant in the deep heart of the Middle Ages, and to you, the wind is a living thing. It is a warning. It is a hunt. The fire has burned down to a dull, pulsing red eye in the center of the room. You do not dare to get up and add more wood just yet. The shadows on the walls are long and distorted. They dance in ways that do not seem to match the flickering of the embers. You keep your eyes downcast, because you have been told since you were a child that during the coldest nights of the year, the veil between the world you know and the world you fear becomes as thin as a sheet of ice. If you look too closely into the corners of the room, you might see something looking back. This is the psychological reality of the medieval winter. Survival is not just about calories and firewood. It is about navigating a landscape populated by the restless dead, the ancient spirits of the forest, and the terrifying whims of the divine. When the sun sets at mid-afternoon and does not return for 16 hours, the darkness becomes a physical weight. It is a territory you must survive. You hear a sudden, sharp crack from the roof above you. It is likely just the timber contracting in the sub-zero temperatures, but you freeze. Your heart hammers against your ribs. To you, that sound is a footfall. You think of the wild hunt. This is the most enduring and terrifying legend of the winter months across all of Europe. Whether you call the leader Odin, Woden, or even the ghost of a wicked local lord, the premise is the same. On the most brutal nights of the blizzard, a spectral army of hunters and hounds gallops through the sky. They are the souls of the unbaptized, the restless warriors, and the damned. They do not ride on the ground, but on the very back of the storm itself. You have been told that if you are outside when the hunt passes, you will be swept up into their ranks and forced to ride with them for eternity. Even inside your home, you are not entirely safe. You have heard stories of men who looked out their windows during a blizzard and saw the glowing eyes of the hounds. By morning, those men were found dead, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute horror. So you stay still. You pull your wool cloak tighter. You pray. The superstitions of winter serve a purpose. They are a way for you to make sense of the senseless cruelty of nature. When a healthy child dies in the night from a sudden fever, it is easier to believe that a spirit like Perkta reached in and took them than to believe it was just a random tragedy. In the regions of Germany and the Alps, Perkta is the goddess of winter who wanders the earth during the 12 days of Yuletide. To the good and the hard-working, she might leave a silver coin. But to those who have been lazy or who have not finished their spinning by the solstice, she is a nightmare. They say she carries a long knife under her robes to slit the bellies of the unworthy. You think of your half-finished chores and the wool you did not spin today, and you feel a cold sweat break out on your brow despite the freezing air. The medieval winter is a season of paradox. It is a time of holy celebration, the birth of Christ, and the light of the Epiphany. But it is also a time when the old pagan world feels most alive. The church tells you that the bells and the incense will protect you, but you still keep a piece of iron tucked under your straw mattress. Iron is an ancient protection. It is a metal that the fae and the spirits of the moor cannot touch. You also have a small pouch of salt near the door. You have heard that a ghost cannot cross a line of salt without counting every single grain, and you hope that if something tries to enter, the sunrise will catch it before it finishes its task. The silence of a heavy snowfall is perhaps the most unnerving thing of all. In the summer, the world is loud. Birds, insects, and the rustle of leaves provide a constant background noise. But when the snow piles up against your door and covers the village, the world goes deaf. This sensory deprivation does strange things to your mind. Every creak of the house, every groan of the ice on the nearby pond becomes a signal. You begin to believe that the dead are walking. In many medieval communities, it is believed that the souls of your ancestors return to the family hearth during the coldest nights to seek the warmth they no longer have in the grave. You might even leave a small portion of your meager supper on the table as an offering. You do not want your grandfather to be angry. You do not want the spirits of the house to feel neglected. There is a deep, ancestral fear that if the spirits are not honored, the fire will go out, or the cow in the lean-to will stop giving milk, or the roof will collapse under the weight of the snow. These rituals of food and prayer are your only way to exert control over a world that seems determined to kill you. Outside, you hear a long, low howl. It is a wolf, or at least you hope it is a wolf. In the winter of your mind, the line between a wolf and a werewolf is dangerously thin. Hunger does strange things to men. You have heard rumors from the next village over about a man who vanished into the woods and returned with the eyes of a beast. You know that when the hunger moon rises and the grain stores are low, the darkness can change a person. The superstition of the werewolf is a manifestation of the very real fear of social collapse. In the dead of winter, when the village is cut off from the rest of the world, you are only as safe as your neighbors are sane. The fear of the monster outside is often just a mask for the fear of the desperation inside. You reach out and touch the wall of your hovel. You can feel the cold radiating through the mud and wattle. You think about the symbols carved into the main beam of the roof. They are called apotropaic marks or witch marks. They are swirling designs and interlocking circles meant to confuse evil spirits and trap them in a never-ending loop. You find comfort in those marks. They were carved by your father and his father before him. They are a physical record of the fact that your family has survived these nights for generations. The superstitions are not just shadows. They are a map. They tell you where to walk, what to say, and how to behave so that you do not lose your mind to the isolation. As the night deepens, the wind begins to die down. The sudden lack of noise is almost more frightening than the storm. You find yourself straining to hear anything. You imagine the spirits of the blizzard standing just outside your thin walls, waiting. You think of the Jack O'Kent, or the Krampus, or the various nameless terrors that haunt the frozen woods. You realize that your ancestors did not just fear the cold. They feared the emptiness that the cold brings. They feared the way the winter strips away the layers of civilization until you are just a shivering animal in a dark hole. But then you see a faint change in the darkness. It is not light yet, but the pitch blackness is turning to a deep, bruised purple. The morning is still hours away, but the worst of the night has passed. You survived the hours when the wild hunt was at its peak. You survived the time when the ghosts of the ancestors come to sit by the fire. You take a shaky breath, and the air is so cold it stings your lungs. You realize that these superstitions are the way your culture processes the trauma of the season. By giving the wind a name, you make it something you can understand. By giving the hunger a face, like a wolf or a demon, you make it something you can fight with prayer or iron. The ghosts of the blizzard are real to you because the danger of the blizzard is real. As long as you follow the old rules, as long as you keep the salt by the door and the iron under your bed, you feel as though you have a chance. You lean back against the cold wall and close your eyes for a few moments of fitful sleep. You know that when the sun finally rises, the world will be transformed into a white, sparkling wasteland. The tracks in the snow might belong to a rabbit, or they might belong to something else. You will not check. You will simply go about the business of staying alive. The spirits will retreat into the shadows of the forest, waiting for the sun to drop again, and you will be ready for them. You have the fire, you have the faith, and you have the ancient wisdom of those who lived through the ice before you. The night was long, and the ghosts were many, but the dawn is coming, and with it, the simple, blessed reality of another day. The shadows on the wall begin to pull back as the first true gray light of the winter morning filters through the gaps in the thatch. The terrors of the night do not vanish completely, but they shrink. They become stories you will tell around the fire next time, a way to warn the children and keep the traditions alive. You stand up, your joints cracking like the frozen wood of the house, and you prepare to face the world once more. The battle with the physical cold begins again, but for now, the battle with the spirits is won. You have survived the ghosts of the blizzard. There is a sound that defines the end of your long ordeal, and it is not the sound of a bird or a human voice. It is a steady, rhythmic drip. You hear it first in the deep, quiet hours of the night when you lie awake beneath your heavy, scratchy wool blankets. At first, you think it might be a leak in your thatch roof, a stray bit of melting frost finding its way through the straw and soot. But as you listen, you realize it is coming from outside. It is the sound of the world weeping as it unfreezes. The massive icicles hanging from the eaves are losing their grip. The great white death is finally receding, and for the first time in months, the air that creeps through the cracks in your walls does not feel like a sharpened blade. It feels heavy, damp, and strangely sweet. You push yourself up from your pallet. Your joints ache with a dull, familiar fire, a souvenir of the damp cold that has lived in your bones since November. You move slowly, your body thin and weakened by months of careful rationing. Every movement is a calculation of energy. You walk to the door, feeling the familiar unevenness of the packed dirt floor beneath your calloused feet. When you pull the heavy wooden latch and push the door open, the light that hits your eyes is blinding. It is not the harsh, blue-white glare of the snow, but a pale, milky gold. You squint, shielding your eyes with a hand that is stained with the soot of 1,000 fires. The landscape that greets you is a bruised and battered version of the world you remember. The vast, pristine sheets of white have collapsed into gray, honeycombed slush. The mud is back, and it is glorious. It is a thick, chocolate-colored slurry that coats your boots and clings to your shins. But to you, it represents the return of life. The earth is no longer a frozen tomb. It is soft. It is breathing. You stand there on your threshold, drawing in a breath so deep it makes your lungs tingle. The smell is overwhelming. It is the scent of wet wood, old smoke, and the sharp, pungent tang of the manure pile finally thawing out in the yard. It is the smell of survival. But do not be deceived. This is not the season of plenty. In many ways, the coming weeks will be the most dangerous time of the year. Historians and those who come after you will call this the hunger gap. Your stores are at their absolute lowest. The grain bin is a hollow cavern, with only a few handfuls of dusty rye and oats clinging to the corners. The salted pork you tucked away in the autumn is gone, leaving only the rinds and the memory of its grease. Your stomach is a tight, knotted ball, and your children's faces are sharp and angular, their eyes too large for their sunken cheeks. You have survived the freezing, but now you must survive the wait. You look across the village towards your neighbors' huts. You see thin ribbons of smoke rising from their chimneys, and for every hearth that is active, you feel a surge of relief. You count the houses, looking for signs of movement. You see the blacksmith's wife stepping out to throw a bucket of gray wash water onto the melting snow. You see the village elder leaning on his staff, staring toward the southern horizon where the clouds are breaking. You realize with a heavy heart that some doors remain shut. Some families did not have enough wood, or enough fat, or enough luck to see this morning. In the medieval world, the first breath of spring is always a roll call of the living and the dead. You turn back inside to your own hearth. The fire is a low glow of embers now, and for the first time in months, you do not feel the desperate urge to pile more wood on it. The frantic, life-or-death struggle for warmth has shifted into a quiet, simmering exhaustion. You look at your livestock, huddled in the corner of the house. Your cow is a ghost of herself, her ribs standing out like the rafters of a church. She has survived on handfuls of dried leaves and straw, and her milk has long since dried up. You reach out and stroke her neck, feeling the coarse hair and the warmth of her hide. You have shared your breath and your living space with her all winter, and in a very real way, her survival is tied to yours. Soon, you will be able to lead her out to the commons, where the first blades of weak, watery grass are beginning to poke through the mud. The work begins almost immediately. There is no time for a holiday or a celebration of your endurance. The sun is higher in the sky, and that means the clock is ticking. You go to your shed and pull out your tools. Your plow is a heavy, wooden beast, and you inspect it with a practiced eye. The winter dampness has made the wood swell, and you will need to tighten the bindings. You check the iron share, looking for rust or cracks. This piece of metal is more precious than gold to you. Without it, you cannot break the heavy, wet soil. Without it, there will be no harvest in the autumn, and the next winter will surely claim you. You spend the day in the yard, repairing what the cold has broken. Your hands are clumsy and cold-pressed, but as the sun reaches its zenith, you feel a genuine warmth on your back. You strip off your heavy outer cloak, the one made of matted sheepskin that has been your constant companion for 4 months. You lay it over a fence rail, letting the sun beat down on the wool. The steam begins to rise from it as the trapped moisture evaporates, carrying away the smell of the windowless hut. Feels like a shedding of skin. You are stepping out of your winter shell. By mid-afternoon, the village is alive with a strange, frantic energy. You hear the rhythmic thud of axes from the nearby woods as men go out to gather the fallen branches of winter storms. You hear the shouting of teamsters as they try to coax their weakened oxen through the deep mud of the lanes. Everyone is moving, driven by the biological imperative to prepare. You gather with a few other men by the church wall, and the conversation is not about the terrors of the blizzards you have just endured. It is about the soil. Is it too wet to turn? How much seed did the mice get into? Who has a spare bushel of barley to lend? You find yourself looking at the ground, searching for the first true sign of spring. You find it near the base of a stone wall where the sun lingers the longest. A single, tiny green shoot of a snowdrop or perhaps a wild leek. It is a fragile, translucent thing, appearing almost impossibly delicate against the backdrop of the gray, rotting slush. You stare at it for a long time. This tiny speck of green is the victor in the war against the frost. It is the proof that the cycle has turned once more. That evening, the meal is meager. A thin pottage made of a few shriveled leeks, a handful of dried peas, and the very last of the grain, boiled until it is soft. It is not much, but as you sit around the small table, the atmosphere is different. The silence of midwinter, which was heavy with dread and the fear of the dark, has been replaced by a silence of rest. You are tired in a new way, the tiredness of a body that has begun to move again, rather than a body that is merely huddling to stay warm. You look at your family. You are all thinner, your skin sallow from the lack of sunlight and fresh food. You are covered in the soot of the hearth, and your clothes are ragged. But you are there. You have navigated the most treacherous terrain a human being can face, the frozen heart of the medieval winter. You have outlasted the howling winds, the bone-deep frost, and the psychological weight of the endless dark. You have kept the fire burning when the wood was low. You have kept your spirits from breaking when the walls seemed to close in. As you prepare for bed, you do not pull the blankets as tightly around your chin. You leave the heavy shutter on the small window slightly ajar, just a crack. You want to hear the world waking up. You want to hear the wind moving through the budding trees instead of whistling through the dead grass. You know that tomorrow will be hard. You know you will spend it waist-deep in mud, pushing a plow until your muscles scream. You know that you will be hungry for weeks to come, waiting for the first vegetables to grow and the first lambs to be born. But as you close your eyes, you feel a sense of profound triumph. You are a survivor. You are part of a long, unbroken chain of people who have stared down the winter and refused to blink. The great cold has retreated back to the high mountains and the far north, defeated once again by the persistence of the hearth and the resilience of the human spirit. The first breath of spring has touched your face, and the long, cold night is finally over. You have made it to the light.